You're listening to the Limitless Leadership Podcast, the podcast designed to help automotive repair shops learn how to lead, coach, train, and manage their team better by sharing proven techniques and thought-provoking interviews from industry leaders. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's today's episode.
All right, leaders, whether you're running a shop, leading a team, or leveling up in your career, you know details matter. And if you're like me, that includes keeping your beard on point. That's why I trust the Bearded Brotherhood. Their beard oils, beard balms, and mustache waxes, among other, are made with all natural ingredients, no junk, no shortcuts, just top-tier quality that keeps my beard looking sharp and feeling great. And let's talk scents. Whether it's their best-selling Woodsman or my personal favorite, Lone Stranger, the Bearded Brotherhood keeps me smelling fresh and my beard stays soft all day. If you take your beard game seriously, this is the stuff that you need. And because you're part of the Limitless Leadership podcast family, I've got a deal for you. Just visit thebeardedbrotherhood.co/lead15 to grab your favorite products and get 15% off in the process. Because a great leader deserves a great beard. Now, back to today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Limitless Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Parnell. And before we get started today, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things you need to on social media to help this show reach people and build leaders. As you know, that is our mission, to reach people and build leaders. And once again, I'm joined by an incredible leader in the automotive repair industry. Our guest today is a field training representative for Hunter Engineering Company. He's also I will call him this. He is the positivity machine. You might already know who I'm speaking about. This is my friend, Justin Allen. Justin, thanks for being here.
Good morning, Josh. It's a pleasure, man. Absolutely.
Well, man, hey, I'm excited to have you on the show, Justin. You and I recently met in person at Vision not too long ago. And I remember I saw you made a beeline. I was like, hey, man, I got to introduce myself. We've been following each other a little bit for a minute on social. And something about you, Justin, I really appreciate and admire and respect is you are a bright light in this industry. I think everyone who comes across you and everyone who knows you knows that you're someone who just always smiling, always positive, someone who people can just go to. And honestly, man, just go to you for some positive vibes. I mean, that's really what you're all about. But in addition, you're also a fantastic trainer for Hunter Engineering Company. I'm going to ask that you share with the audience really who you are, your background, kind of what got you here, what you're doing now, before we get into today's episode.
Okay, sure. And first, thank you for all the kind words. I have a few thoughts about that, and we'll get to it. And what got me here? I've been in automotive since 1998. Turning wrenches on my own stuff my whole life. My dad, I grew up underneath cars, passing the wrenches, holding the flashlight, all that normal stuff, I think, for a certain group of us. And the moment came where I was young and dumb and broke, right? And I had to decide, what on earth am I going to do? What happens next? And so I did enter the automotive industry officially as a paid employee in June of 1998 and worked at a Ford dealership for about 9 years, did a bunch of different roles in there. And I think that's, I started to develop that idea of how much I enjoy helping people. Maybe that's been a theme all along, but somehow that started feeding into my desire to help people. And of course, I love cars, so that worked out great. In 2008, the economy in the United States went kind of sideways there for a minute, and the dealership laid off our entire department. I was managing the quick lane maintenance department there at the time. This is in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And I didn't know what happened next. Here's a part of the story that everybody doesn't know. I was living on a commune out in the woods at that time. And so I had very little pressure and responsibility. I'd sold a house a few months prior and paid off all my debts. And I just worked the farm, worked the farm for about a week, just running a bush hog and clearing land and stuff. And didn't know what was going to happen. But then the moment came where I decided, I've got a lot of momentum in automotive. Why don't I stick with that? And here we are. So Hunter, the opportunity presented itself. I went to Hunter unemployed, single income family, 3 kids, nervous, afraid, scared. And at that time, you didn't get hired for 7 weeks. You had to go to St. Louis and train for 7 weeks. and you wouldn't get signed the contract until the very last morning of that. So it was 7 weeks of, anxiety and nervousness on top of everything else, I guess there. But then Justin gets unleashed on the world as a hunter representative in 2008, and I've been with the company for about so that's 17 years ago. Started with the company, and I was running like crazy, having a good time ever since, I guess.
So speak to the 7 weeks. You talked about 7 weeks of anxiety, some nervousness, really some uncertainty, and one thing right now that a lot of my clients are sharing with me when we're on coaching calls are like, man, like we're slow, and I'm like, well, what do you attest to the low foot traffic? And it's like tariffs, the administration, the uncertainty, the economy, the season, spring break, the rodeo. Like there's always something. There's always some kind of reason. But speak to the person who's like, hey, I'm living with this anxiety on a day-to-day basis. What can they do to get above the line, to stay positive, to minimize that level of anxiety and stress?
Yeah, I think so. Let me put it this way: when the lockdown occurred, March 2020, we had 6 teenagers at home. It was brutal, and I think of it related to anxiety for anybody. I think the same strategy that I tried to employ at that time is relevant for anybody in that kind of situation. And first of all, you've got to have purpose, right? You can get frustrated and be upset and anxious. You can do that. But you have to then decide, okay, so now what? So I'm anxious, I'm nervous, I'm scared. Now what? And so that what becomes your purpose. Like, what on earth am I going to do? How am I going to go about doing it? So you figure out what your purpose is. And in a lot of those cases, like goodness, if it's a shop owner or whatever, if it's automotive window there, then my purpose is going to stay open to take care of my customers, take care of my employees or whatever. You find that you agree on a purpose, regardless of the fear, the anxiety, the frustration. You have to agree that there's still an objective. So you decide that. And then the second thing is you just start doing it's the same way you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. I mean, step one's going to be to get out of bed. And if you're not comfortable, if you're struggling to get out of bed in the morning, I would encourage you to look into a lady named Mel Robbins, who has this 5-second rule that is all about, in those moments of frustration, how you're going to overcome that stuff and make it happen. So exercise your 5 seconds. And so purpose, find your purpose, and then just get moving on it, man. Just get moving on it. I may not be able to do everything right today, but I can do one thing right today, and kind of that snowballing little tiny successes, snowballing that stuff throughout the course of the day. Hey, I got up, I brushed my teeth, I got dressed for work, I got out the door. Maybe I'm 5 minutes late, but at least I got out the door. It's all it's psychological warfare, right? When you are struggling with those kinds of feelings of incompetence or ineptitude or just I'm overwhelmed by all of the things. I see it in our groups on social media. You'll see the shop owner that's absolutely overwhelmed. I've got a friend that I was just connected to, who was connecting me and some others to a person just yesterday. That this person's having like multiple bypass surgery, I think today, this week, something like this. And it's a single operator business, right? Automotive business. It's just him and maybe his daughter is the service advisor. Man, like that's a lot on your plate,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And people that are facing any degree of stress with any of this kind of stuff, you still can't control it all. You decide, there's that big old circle of things in our lives that we can't control. You can control this little bit in the middle, right? Which is your attitude and your decisions and the way you're going to respond to things. But find your purpose, get to work on it, and control the things you can control. That's all any of us can do at any point in time.
Yeah, we want to focus on what we can control and try our best not to worry about what we can't control. You said a key word, Justin, and that is decide. You said you find your purpose and then you decide. You decide to do X, Y, or Z. You decide to take action. Ultimately, it's a choice. And what we know is that the two things we can control each and every day is our attitude and our effort. We can choose positivity. We can choose to provide maximum effort. These are all choices we can make, but it takes a lot of strength, courage, vulnerability to take action. But ultimately, I love what you said. It's like we can find the good in every day. We know that not every day is going to be a good day, but we can find the good in every day. And if we can find one thing, if we can do one thing, we're slowly taking action to affect positive change. Let's speak to purpose, because some of your listeners, some of the listeners right now are saying, this is great. I've been trying to find my purpose for years. I'm struggling with finding purpose. What do you say to someone who struggles with finding purpose and subsequently feels like they're reluctant to take action because they don't yet know their purpose?
To me, that's a really challenging place to find yourself. Like the idea of what is my purpose? And I mean, I guess at the root of it, my purpose is to love people. So it's hard for me to relate in a sense. But maybe, I mean, if your purpose is to be a good service advisor, if your purpose is to, provide for your kids, all those different kind of things, you're asking me how to deal with, like, how does somebody go about it if they don't feel a sense of purpose? That's really the question, right?
Yeah, it's really like, how do you find your purpose? And I'll share this, because what you're doing, Justin, is you're identifying, you know what, like at the root, like, because I mean, I'm looking at you thinking about like, well, how do I know my purpose? Well, my purpose at the root of it is to love people. Therefore, that's at the foundation of every decision that you're making, because you make decisions based on the foundation. And if your foundation is loving people, I see this the way you live your life each and every day. We all do. And so what we know is that you are passionate about people, and we can often, like, our purpose is derived from our passion. So if you're listening thinking, well, I don't know what my purpose is, like, I'd first ask, well, what makes you smile? You know?
That's what I was just thinking of, the way you're wording that. I'm like, man, what an interesting spot to be in, to decide you don't know what your purpose is.
Yeah.
Because then it can be anything you want it to be, right? You can, just like you were about to say there, like, what are you passionate about? I don't know. What do you want your purpose to be, right?
Yeah.
I do reflect back on the years. So like, I've been in automotive for 25 or 27 years, I guess, at this point, really. And now I look back and I'm kind of like, I could have been in boats. Like, I like boats. I like being around the water. Wouldn't that have been another interesting path? Because they need trainers in the boating industry. They need sales reps in the boating industry. I could have chosen that path. Maybe I love snowmobiles, or I love snow skiing. Like, I could have been selling ski lift equipment up in the Rocky Mountains somewhere. I think that idea of not really knowing what your purpose is an exciting place to be. I do know this too. When we talk about exciting and we talk about the word anxious and nervous, they say that your body's physiological response in both situations is the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're feeling anxiety, but that's the same feeling chemically and mechanically as when you are excited. So it's almost like framing it however you want it to see. When you feel like you're anxious because you don't know what's about to happen, you can be excited about what you don't know is about to happen too, right? You can just make that decision and restructure how you're viewing that stuff, right? But so to be not know what my purpose is. That's the way I guess that's the way I was. I was 22. Let's see if I have to count back in time to 98. I was 23 years old. And I didn't really know what my purpose was, but I knew that I enjoyed talking to people, and I knew that I liked cars. And that's how I landed at a Ford dealership.
Justin, you just shared something that I hope doesn't just get lost on the audience or just get glazed over, because not many of us are able to take a potential anxiety or fear and turn it into excitement or this positivity. Like, because what you shared is like, man, it's interesting to think that someone may not know what their purpose is, or they're struggling to find their purpose, and we naturally gravitate towards the negative. That's what humans do. So we just assume that if I'm struggling to find my purpose, it's a bad thing. And you just flipped the script and said, no, this is an exciting thing. Like, this is the world is at your fingertips, right? I mean, like, the world is your oyster, essentially. You have all the opportunities in the world to discover and at least make your purpose. You can choose to find your purpose in this process. That's huge. And because a lot of people don't even consider the fact that they even have a choice to make their purpose.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and along these lines, so I'm teaching classrooms full of students, sometimes one student, sometimes 20 students. sometimes 130 students. I always try to be very specific about some key ideas about the human experience, right? Which is, I love it. It's a roller coaster. There's sometimes that are terrible and sometimes that are amazing and sometimes that are broke and sometimes that you're brokenhearted. Um, and along those lines of people who don't know what the purpose is the same concept of I'm never going to be able to make it in this town, and they keep staying in that town, right? The idea, the notion of not knowing what your purpose is similar to the idea of you can live anywhere you want to live,
Yeah.
right? With 6 children, a lot of them, there was that moment, and I think they've learned not to talk about it the same way they used to. There was that moment of, man, how am I ever going to afford a house? How am I going to do that? And I turned them on really quickly to a Instagram account called Cheap Old Houses. And I'm like, guys, I can't buy a house in the town where I grew up either. That's because my parents raised me in a place that they thought was pretty cool. And it turns out other people thought it was pretty cool too. And so supply and demand makes that pretty intense. You can buy a house all over this gorgeous country. There's so many cool places you can go. But I say this to my students from the angle of, if you are miserable where you are a Greyhound bus ride away from making a pretty dramatic potential change in your life. And here's some other good news. Let's say you move away and it doesn't go well. Turns out you can move back. You can keep making changes as often as you need to in life. It's not you only get 3 changes. It's not like the wishes from the genie, right? You only get 3 changes. You make changes as much as you need to make in order to sort out, what it is you're going to do, where you're going to be. So it's that same notion of, man, I can be anything I want to be, and I can be anywhere I want to be. You don't have to feel broke and miserable. And I'm going to joke about the technicians that live in the Rust Belt right now. You don't have to fight rust all day long every day if you don't want to. I know some of them love it, but you can also move to Arizona, somewhere where there's no rust on the cars, right? Relatively speaking, you can do that if that's what you want to do.
What do you think is keeping people stuck? They're complaining about it, or they're at least talking about it and saying, "Man, I'm never going to make it here. I can't do X, Y, or Z." What's keeping them there to begin with?
Mindset. The limitations of, and by the way, I'm a family guy, and I love family. And there's people that are actively miserable, mind you. I'm not talking about people that just I wonder if it could be different. I'm talking about people that are miserable, and they maybe they've built a terrible reputation in this town, or who knows what. They've job hopped a few too many times, and they've got that Eeyore mentality, right? Like Winnie the Pooh Eeyore stuff. And but they're afraid to move away. They're in their comfort zone.
All they know, right? Yeah.
They're in that box. They know what's here. It's that fear of sure, I could move to Arizona, but what if they don't like me there? What if I can't find a job? What if I can't find an apartment? What if I can't? What if this? What if that? And another one of those that just flip it. Yeah, but what if it's amazing?
Yeah.
What if you find the love of your life? What if you land a job with a shop owner that empowers you and helps you take everything to a new level? Right? The what ifs, similar to that anxiety. What if, when we view it as negative, well, sure, that'll hold you back. But what if it's incredible? That's always also possible. You know what I mean?
It's another choice.
We put on these little blinders, and we're comfortable. At 50 years of age, I'm starting to relate to that, yeah, but this is good. I'm good. This is comfortable. Why would I want to do these other things? I get it. I understand that. That's a human thing. But when I see these 24-year-old humans feeling stuck, oh boy, then I would point you to Gary Vayner.
Yeah.
Vaynerchuk. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to get that wrong. And let's just talk about listen, you're not stuck. You got a lifetime ahead of you, 24-year-old. You've got so many opportunities. And honestly, I think of it, even me at 50, let's face it, that we as humans probably don't really start becoming quite productive as humans till we're at least 18. Let's say you're at least 18. So then that would mean I'm 32 years into trying to be a real functioning human. I might have 32 years left. So if it took me 32 years to get to this point, man, I could have some explosive fireworks in the next 32 years. I'm just excited.
Can you imagine, Justin? I mean, you speak to the 24-year-old, and because you just talked about it takes about 18 years before you're kind of like this fully functioning, productive adult, right? But yet 6 years later, there's a 24-year-old who's saying, I'm stuck. It's sad. But what we know is that we've heard the phrase, no, you can't, on average, 150,000 times by the time we're 17 years old. But we've heard the phrase, yes, you can, only 5,000 times. So we're conditioned, like it's this learned behavior that we're conditioned to think the worst and think the negative and think of limitations. These are all perceived limitations. They're limiting beliefs. And we know that the similarity between faith and fear is that they both believe in a future that hasn't happened yet. So why wouldn't we choose faith?
Right.
Speak it.
Positive what if,
right?
Negative what if.
Yeah, I mean, you're going from what's the worst that could happen to what's the best that could happen. So here's, I'm going to ask you to coach me for a second, Justin. I want to know what's the best that could happen, because you got 6 kids and you had 6 teenagers during COVID. I got 4 kids. 2 of them are teenagers. We're about to have a 3rd teenager. So tell me, what's the best that could happen, Justin? Help me out here, because we're getting into the thick of things, and it's tough. It is tough.
It's time. Man, I can tell you that it is so exciting. And listen, tragedy happens in lives. Who knows? Like, thinking about the worst that could happen could freak a person out. But in our situation, we have been blessed that 5 of them are now out of the house. They are fully functioning. They have jobs. They have cars. It's exciting stuff. That transition, that all the teenagers in the house, that's a busy time.
Yeah.
We had a soccer player, a volleyball player, 2 swimmers, and 2 that were involved in robotics, and the running and the racing and the weekends. It was intense. So the best that can happen is that they all become self-sufficient and move out and know that they are loved and supported, and they call you to ask you about things. My son, who's 21 and I think he's 21. Boy, that's an awkward moment. I think he's 21 and he lives in Asheville.
You got 5 more. Give yourself grace.
I know. I mean, I can tell you what year he was born, so then I just have to do math. He's 21. And he called last night just to FaceTime with my wife and I. He just hadn't seen us in a while, want to catch up. And that's such a good feeling when the kids do. And it's funny, we're in a bubble right now, my wife and I, where at the top of this moment, our parents, they're getting along in years. They're still with us and they're still doing fine. And then at the bottom end of it, we don't have any grandkids or anything yet. So we've got this kind of peaceful moment in time where we're just trying to make the most of she and I together the best we can, because we'll move into that next chapter, and it'll be another busy chapter at either end of that spectrum, of parents who need more attention and children who you want to play with those grandkids, whatever. So no, you got so much good coming for you, brother.
Hey, man, we're excited, and I love how you said, like, hey, it's an exciting time. Again, some people would say, man, this is an anxious time, but again, you're flipping the script and you're saying this is an exciting time. Justin, you're a tall guy. I expected you to say, I mean, you pretty much got a basketball team at your house, and not one of them were playing basketball, which was ironic to me.
Yeah, I know. And as a parent, the ways that I've failed my kids, which are numerous, right? We've all failed our kids. I never got any of them out into motorsports. And I never managed to get any of it in the marching band. I wasn't worried about basketball so much, but I really wanted those 2 things for my kids, and it never happened. I never took my kids snow skiing either. And that was another thing.
Well, hey, man. Oh, plenty of time. Every day. I mean, every day. So, yeah, how much time do you got? I know, right. Yeah. Well, very good. And so each season that you alluded to, you're also leading differently, and maybe purpose changes too. I mean, I want to go back and say this too. For those who might be listening, struggling to find purpose, it's okay that you're in the place that you're in, and purpose is going to change over time. Priorities change over time. People change over time. So don't worry about not having it all figured out at 24 or 44 or 64, whatever age you're at. But let's talk about leadership. Of course, this is a leadership podcast, Justin. So I'll straight up ask you, what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, leadership to me is loving the people well, and loving the people sometimes means discipline, right? Loving the people sometimes means empowerment and encouragement. But as a leader, and my kids love that I do hyperbole. A shepherd is a leader, and the sheep aren't necessarily making any big decisions, right? I'm not trying to dumb down humans to being sheep, but I'm thinking of it in terms of that leader's objective. The leader is going to get the sheep to the safe place, going to make sure that they get the grass, make sure they get the water, make sure they're protected from the wolves, etc. And so a good leader is, in my opinion, doing those same kinds of things. I'm guiding people in the right direction. I'm correcting them when they're making some bad choices. I'm interested in their well-being in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And certainly leadership in that form. My favorite example of it for me was the dealership owner where I operated there originally at that Ford dealership. Man named Steve Easler. He was phenomenal for me, and he was so much of those things. It was such an honor to get to work on that team and that family. And I wonder about people when you do business to scale, when the businesses get really large. I know that can be challenging, right? But my best model of leadership usually shows up in a small scale family owned operation. When the guy that'll come around, and I mean, we still probably had 100 employees at certain times, but he would make those rounds at least every week and come and see everybody individually and make sure that they felt seen, cared about. I think that was a big deal stuff as far as a leader for me.
That's so important. 70% of employees feel disengaged at work, and they're disengaged because they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel valued. And conversely speaking, 80% of employees will tell you that they're fully engaged when they receive meaningful feedback at least once per week. Justin, you are a fantastic trainer. We haven't really talked about training on this episode yet, but I'm curious, what are some things that you do to become like, let's say someone's listening and saying, I need to train my team. I want to do it myself. What do you do to make an impact as a trainer? How do you make an impact as a trainer?
I know I sound like a broken record, but I love the people. First and foremost, I don't know. I get a room full of people, and I want to know who they are and how they are first.
Yeah.
Right. One of the first things we do is I want to hear your name. I want to hear where you're from. I want to hear how much experience you have in what we're about to train on. In those three things, I can gauge your personality, your confidence, all that stuff all at once. Let's find out where you're at first. If I'm going to lead you, I need to know where you're at. Then we can agree on where we're trying to go, and I can help you get there as efficiently as possible. So phrase your question to me one more time. Let me make sure I'm hitting my marks here.
Yeah. So, I'll kind of set the stage too and share this. I want to preface it by saying this. When you and I finally met in person at Vision, you have a knack for making people feel special, making people feel important. And you were very intentional with me and I really appreciated that. I've got to only assume that you do the same thing with people that you're training on a regular basis. If you genuinely love people, and I know that you do, then you're able to show up for them in a much different way than a lot of other, let's say, fairly boring trainers that they might be accustomed to. I'm throwing air quotes around the word boring, but like, how do you show up for folks in a training environment?
Humbly, I think, is part of that too, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. I try to there are agreements that are made. There are agreements that are made in every engagement. Like you say, when we met there in the floor at Vision, as I reach my hand out to shake somebody's hand, there's an agreement here that this is going to work just like this. Your hand's going to come here, my hand's going to go there. Nobody's going to hurt each other. We're going to feel the intensity of each other's handshake in that moment and then regulate appropriately so that we are, doing the same thing. In that room with people, when I'm going to train them, how I show up is humbly, but like I said, I'm finding out who they are and how they are, and I'm trying to make sure that they know who I am and how I am.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, I do that first before I even hear their stuff, because I don't think that's fair. I'm not going to ask you to tell me about yourself if you know nothing about me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about who I am and how I got here and what my thoughts are. And another key component, because I've got it right on the board behind me, there's like 6 kind of bullet points about this. And one of which is that I don't know everything and you don't know everything. And we're going to learn some stuff together. We're going to have a great time. I think there's a lot of training that occurs that is a person up front who is just kind of dictating how everything is going to go. Oop, that's not going to work. That is dictating how everything is going to go. Boy, I'm so dark in here. Sorry.
That was good.
And kind of just, I'm the expert. You are not. You're going to listen to everything I say, and I'm going to take care of business. And you just shut up and sit down and enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a very learning conducive environment for anybody. I don't want to be taught that way. I want to feel attended to. The first time I went to a trainer, it was March 2 years ago that I went to see a hunter trainer doing what I do now to be able to decide whether or not I wanted to do it. Hunter said, I'm not so sure if this is going to work for you, but why don't you go see what you think, right? So I went, and I was so impressed that by the end of the first day, the trainer knew everybody's name. We had like 17 people in class, whatever, and he was calling everybody by the first name. I think it was by the end of the first day. And that kind of set the tone for me on that too, right? Let's make this personal. Let's know who each other is, and let's try to go for it. And that's part of that whole thing. I like when you said that you feel like I make people feel special and stuff. Well,
yes.
doggone it, Josh Parnell, you are special, right? Like all of us are special, and you're unique just like everybody else, right? And I just think that it's so much fun getting to know that thing that makes everybody unique, because they all have it. I like to pull it out of people too, by the way, right? Like some people don't realize what they bring to the table. And in some instances, it's easier than others to bring the light to it. And in a way that's not obviously freaking them out and being, drawing too much attention, because there are plenty of people that would rather not have any attention be brought to them. But I enjoy that in class too. You get people for 3 days, you can see their strengths, and you may see their weaknesses too, but how about we focus on their strengths, right?
That's so key, Justin. Not only are we identifying the strengths, we're focusing on the strengths, but if you're listening, I'm going to encourage you to verbalize to that person, highlight and honor that person, what their strengths are. Call them out. I mean, in a professional, in a positive way, of course. Like, Justin, dude, you are a phenomenal trainer. You connect with an audience so great. The level of authenticity, humility, vulnerability. Identify these traits in this person and let them know, hey, I see you. Like, I see you. I see the impact that you're able to make, not only in your team, but even in me as your leader. And that's going to go such a long way in that person's level of connection and engagement and even performance. So you're not doing it to increase performance, but that's a byproduct of the engagement that you're creating.
Yeah. It's interesting. The digital connection that we have as society has lost the personal connection. And I'm a believer in not withholding praise, right? Like our ability to encourage one another through complimenting people is tremendously advantageous in a world where we're all afraid to accidentally say something that's going to freak somebody out. And I think that's a real bummer. I think I would rather carefully and intentionally say appropriate things appropriately, but withholding it because I'm afraid to say something and it might irritate them or whatever. I think that's more detrimental to our interactions as humans.
One of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou, she said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but the people will never forget how you made them feel. And the intentionality and the words that you're verbalizing to someone, even though they're going to forget those words, which is the first part of her quote, they're not going to forget how you made them feel. And so when I talk about how meeting you in person, you making me feel special, important, I know that every one of your training attendees feels this. So I want to give you kudos and props and say, man, keep doing what you're doing. Keep leading well. Keep impacting people the way that you do, because you're phenomenal at what you do, man.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm gonna sure try.
My last question to you, Justin, is greatest advice you've ever received from a coach or a mentor. What you got for me?
Yeah. Okay, Josh. So greatest advice I've ever received from a coach or mentor. I want to answer this 2 ways real fast for you. One is not directly given to me, but it's just one of these things that's been put out there where Vince Lombardi, talking about coaching in football, right? He his big issue was, listen, if we're going to be good, we've got to be good at the fundamentals. You've got to be good at that basic stuff, right? And this is my approach to anything that any of us are doing. Like, if you want to be good at anything, get back to those basics. And this came to me as a sales guy, ultimately in the sales role with Hunter. What are the basics? Well, crap, get out of the house every day. Go knock on some doors. Go talk to people you haven't seen in a while, right? Be positive and encouraging. Those are the basics of being a sales representative for any company. It's about relationships and connecting with people, right? And so that's a big deal. Oh, never forget the basics. If I'm trying to be a good husband at home for my family, and that's as a leader in that role in my family, I'm trying to be a good husband. And I feel like I'm struggling. What are those basics? Well, I gotta show up. I gotta take out the trash, or whatever the things are, by the way, right? I gotta show up for dinner. I gotta take out the trash. I gotta be there for my wife when she needs me. I can't lay around on the couch watching YouTube all day when there's stuff that needs to be done. I've got to get back to those basics. Yeah. So that, I think, is a big deal as a leader, is don't forget your basics. Like, anytime you're struggling, what are those fundamental things you got to be doing? Because every role has basics, right? The second thing would go back to that dealership owner in Hendersonville, North Carolina, Steve Easler. He would do, and by the way, I say this respectfully for you and all of your listeners. I don't know where anybody is on their philosophical, religious, faith-based experiences or whatever. But there's a verse in the Bible out of Jeremiah when people were struggling, people were having a hard time, and they were encouraged to be strong and courageous in the face of adversity, right? And not only, it didn't say it one time. I think it says it 3 times in a row. We've not been given a spirit of fear, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. Like, go get him, Tiger, is really what that says to me, right? In the face of adversity, like, it is okay. And so I'm telling you, every week, there's always something. And that can be one of those moments when, if I'm feeling a little bit nervous or anxious about something, that be strong and courageous start speaking in my ear over here, right? And that anxiety turns into excitement. Like, I'm not going to be afraid of this thing. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm not going to let that hold me back. I'm going to be strong and courageous, and I'm going to go get it. So I would say that those are probably the 2 most important leadership concepts that have been instilled in me over the years.
Love it. Thank you for sharing, Justin. Man, this is an excellent episode. Thank you for being here. Are we going to see you? We're going to see you at Tools, correct? At the Tools conference in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at Tools in Pennsylvania. Very excited about that.
You're doing a session there?
The ASTA in North Carolina in September. We'll be there.
Yes.
Bouncing around the country a good bit. Having a good time.
Excellent. Well, we will see you at those events. If you're listening, thinking, hey, maybe I should attend an event. Hey, attend these events. You're going to see great guys like Justin Allen at Tools. I promise you're going to have a great time there. And man, I'm excited to see you again in person. And I'm excited for you to make me feel special once again. So thank you, my friend, for being here. Hopefully it's not the last time on this podcast.
Absolutely. My pleasure. You got it, Josh. We'll see you there.
In every episode, we look to transform our leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results. So thank you for tuning in to the Limitless Leadership Podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.